Hello, my name is TCP White. I am on a mission to positively change the world. This is Letter to Mr. President 9. I shall be focusing on relationship with other arms of government, executive relationship with other arms of government. Mr. President, in 2015, either before or immediately after the presidential elections which you won, you gave a speech, I believe, in Chatham House. And in that speech, you referred to yourself as a converted Democrat. I believe that you were using that term or that phrase to reinvent yourself. A reinvention that was yet to be seen or would be evident as the years go by. It is almost 4 years into that administration, and I believe Nigerians have different perspectives of that term converted Democrats. In my opinion, I believe that in more ways than one, you have shown that you are indeed a converted Democrat. One of the ways that I believe you showed that was when you said that you are willing to work with whoever emerges as the leadership of the National Assembly. Now, this is important to me because given the history in Nigeria, it is normal for the president or the governor of any state to handpick whoever will become the leadership of the assembly. This is how we have practiced our own brand of democracy in our history. But when you came out with such statements, for me, I considered it a plus. However, many of your associates thought that you were being naive because of, again, like I said, our history. We believe in this part of the world that the president or the executive is the first arm of government. However, elementary government says otherwise. The legislature is the symbol of democracy in any clime where democracy is upheld, and it is should be the first arm of government. But what we have practiced over time is that the president is the superpower, and he decides who emerges as the leadership of the assembly or as the leadership of the judiciary. In this letter, I want to call your attention to some of the flaws of your first term in your relationship with the National Assembly and the judiciary. One of the principles of democracy is the principle of separation of power, or separation of powers, and the separation of the arms of government, the independence of the judiciary, the independence of the legislature, the independence of the executive, one from another. It also promotes the principle of checks and balances, one to another. In the relationship that you had with the National Assembly in your first term, you yourself just recently said the relationship was not the best. In fact, the relationship can best be described as a cat and mouse relationship. Who was the cat? Who was the mouse? We don't know. But like I've said, in this part of the world, we usually would believe that the presidency or the executive is the cat, while other arms of government are the mouse. But this is not the way it should be in real sense. However, because the person that your party, the All Progressive Congress, handpicked or anointed to emerge as leadership did not emerge, it became the talk of the town, or it became obvious that the presidency went after the leadership of the assembly with all the agencies of states, all the corruption fights, all the code of conduct breaches and all sorts. People have alluded to the fact that it's because the person that the party or that you preferred to be the leadership did not emerge. So since we cannot get the critical mass to impeach them, what we have then done through the years is to hound them, to make life unbearable for them, We see a Senate president that was shuttling between the docks in the courthouse and the National Assembly. This is not how things ought to be. As we go into the next administration, a lot of people are beginning to push you, to call on you to choose or to handpick the National Assembly leadership. Now, maybe this has been done subtly through the party or not. My call here is, Mr. President, please remain as you have avowed to be a converted Democrat. The executive has its role in democracy. The National Assembly has its role in democracy. Whatsoever be the flaws in the way the leadership emerges, I believe that they have their own internal mechanism to check themselves. And again, there is the principle, like I mentioned earlier, of check and balances. So there can be a way to do these things that it will be open, it will be fair to all. Again, the judiciary was not spared in your first term in office. Through the allegation of corruption, or some have said perceived allegation of corruption, the judiciary have been hounded, the judiciary have been haunted, the last case being the removal of the CJN, the Chief Justice of Nigeria. From your perspective, you may have genuine arguments to put forward, but like they say in every area, we need something, or we need actions of government to be done credibly. It must be seen to be free and fair. When government acts, it should not leave room for people to say this is the reason why they did this, and most of the time it is for ulterior motives. Government actions must be done with the utmost best of democracy and the nation at heart. So even when the judiciary or members of the legislature are found guilty of breach of constitution, there are constitutional bodies that have been empowered to sit and resolve these issues. And I believe that the executive, in their in response to their duty to check and balance other arms of government, can partner with these other arms, other bodies that have been constitutionally empowered to handle these matters, to check these people. It should not be seen that agents of the executive will go after people who ought to be independent in their function. What that will do, or the signal it will send, is that the executive is trying to cow other arms of government to become its stooge, and this will not promote democracy. Again, it will also turn the citizens against the government. It will give the opposition weapons to fight against your government. Yes, Nigeria is crying and dying under the weight of corruption. Yes, I personally voted for you to fight corruption, but we must do things in the right manner. There is the right way to do the right thing. If you do the right things with the wrong method, it will still end up wrong. So if we are to fight corruptions, there are institutions of states, there are laws, there are bodies that have been instituted and empowered by the Constitution to fight this, and they must be empowered and allowed to work. The National Judiciary Council can check the body of lawyers or the judiciary. The National Assembly also has its own mechanisms internally to check its members. So we must allow them to work, and the executive should only come in when it is glaring, or when it is allowed, or when it is invited. For example, in checking the National Assembly, the courts can give the executive the powers to act in certain areas, but not to be hounding, or to be seen or perceived to be hounding members of other arms of government just because we do not like the faces of the persons who occupy the leadership. Whereas we may have misgivings against persons, we must remember that the institution will outlive the person. So, Mr. President, my call is that you should strive to foster a healthy working relationship between the executive and other arms of government, because Nigeria and Nigerians need this healthy synergy and checks and balances to foster the necessary peace, prosperity, and progress that we are all yearning for. My name is TCP White. I am on a mission to positively change the world.